Salutations, I'm Jessica, and you're watching Game Dev Made Easy. Today's video, we will discuss the principle in programming called D.R.Y, and we are all guilty of violating it. So, what is D.R.Y? What are the signs you are violating D.R.Y, and how can you fix it once you've noticed it? Let's get into it. Don't repeat yourself is what D.R.Y stands for, and it is a very simple principle. You write code once. If you notice that you are repeatedly using the code you've already written in different functions, that means that you should extract it into its own function. This applies for any type of programming you are doing, from software to games, and everything in between. Let's take a look at some code that violates D.R.Y. In this source, there are two classes I want to focus on specifically. That would be the top-down camera change and side view camera change classes. We aren't worried about the header files, just the code itself. If we look at initialize in the top-down camera change class, we can see that we are creating a bounding box. Now, let's take a look at the side view camera change class. We can see that these functions are exactly the same. In other words, we repeated ourselves, and we really shouldn't. But that's not all. Let's look at the process event function. We can see here that we are checking to see which object is entering this area. If it is the player, then we want to switch the camera from the side view to the top-down camera. Let's look at the top-down camera change class. We are doing the same thing, only we are switching the camera from the side view to the top-down camera. We again violated D.R.Y. This is a pretty easy example to recognize for D.R.Y violation, but at the same time, this is generally the way you will see it. The code is almost 100% exactly the same, with minor differences. So, how can we fix this? By extracting the offending code and adding parameters to the function for where things need to be different. Let's start with that initialization code. This one is pretty simple, since there is nothing that really needs to be changed. However, since this code is built in CryEngine, we have to take something into consideration. The m_p entity is an entity that is specific to the class that inherits from iEntity component. Since this will be a helper class that doesn't inherit from it, we need a parameter for it. The easiest way to do that is to just put a pointer to iEntity, and then we can call it whatever we want. I will call mine m_p entity to align with what will be passed into it. We can see that the rest of the code is one-to-one with how it originally looked. Now, all we have to do is call this function in our camera change classes and place the m_p entity here, and it will work as intended. Now, let's do the slightly more complex one. This function will have to take a parameter for sEntityEvent and two booleans. This is because the original function declared the sEntityEvent reference, so to pass this around we will need to do the same. And the reason for the two booleans is because that was the only difference between the two functions, which one was set to false and which one was set to true. The code is basically the same minus the false and true designations being replaced with those two boolean values. Now, when we call it in a class, we just have to specify those values in the parameter, and we are good to go. This was a bit shorter than my other tutorials, but just as informative. Saturday, I will be releasing the game plugin tutorial, and will be streaming working on my game on Twitch, D.R.Y, YouTube, and Trovo at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Come join in for the fun.